Okay, so when we think about, humanity moving beyond Earth, the picture that usually comes to mind is, well, it's planets, right? Terraforming Mars, these huge, massive undertakings. But today, we're going to dig into something maybe a bit more radical, something you might not expect. What if we didn't aim for planets? What if we aimed much, much smaller? Yeah, our deep dive today is looking at this, frankly, kind of astonishing idea, taking these, barren, frozen asteroids and turning them into actual living biospheres, like self-contained little world floating ecosystems. It definitely sounds like science fiction, I know, and that's sort of why we're fascinated by it. It's surprising. But this isn't just dreaming. It involves some serious stuff: advanced biotechnology, cutting-edge material engineering, even orbital agriculture. So our mission for you, our listener, is to explore this question. Could the next rainforest maybe bloom not on Earth, but inside a rock floating in space? Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here, I think, is how it forces us to rethink, where life can even exist. What are the boundaries? What do we even mean by nature when we talk about space? It's not just about the tech, which is amazing in itself, but the idea that an asteroid's weaknesses, its small size, no air could actually be turned into strengths. That's the leap. So we're going to explore the science, yes, but also the deeper implications, growing life from rocks, basically.
It does sound wildly counterintuitive, though. I mean, asteroids, They're small, right? No atmosphere, freezing cold, bombarded with radiation. So given all those pretty obvious drawbacks, what's the hidden upside? What's the thinking that makes them potentially viable for life?
Well, yeah, those drawbacks are real. But asteroids have some incredible, often overlooked advantages, too. For starters, resources. They are packed with stuff we need. Water ice, loads of it sometimes, carbon, metals, silicates, the actual building blocks for an ecosystem. But here's a key thing: microgravity. It makes construction potentially much lighter, easier. And because gravity is so low, getting things there, landing, launching again, it takes way less delta V. That's the effort, the fuel needed to change velocity.
Ah, okay, so it's cheaper in terms of energy and resources to work with them compared to a big planet or moon.
Exactly. It fundamentally changes the economics of building stuff in space. Plus, they're relatively close by. Lots in near-Earth orbits or the main belt. Surprisingly accessible, some of them.
Right. So the core idea isn't one massive terraforming job, but maybe lots of smaller distributed habitats, like space greenhouses, but literally built from the asteroid itself. That does sound more manageable, maybe even more resilient in the long run.
That's part of the thinking, yes. Distributed resilience.
Okay, so this micro-terraforming, it's obviously not just sticking a plant in some asteroid soil. The science, the engineering to turn a rock into a habitat, that sounds incredibly complex. So say you've picked your asteroid, where do you even start physically reshaping it?
Good question. First step is definitely picking the right one. C-types, the carbonaceous asteroids, they're prime candidates. They naturally have water, organic compounds. And we actually know a bit about these already thanks to missions like NASA's OSIRIS-REx to Bennu or Chase Hayabusa 2 to Ryugu. We've seen them up close.
Okay, so we have some data to work with.
Exactly. Once you've got your target, the next big step is, hollowing it out. You use robotic mining, carefully carving out huge spaces inside. But you have to be super careful to keep the asteroids structurally sound. These hollowed-out bits become the containers for the ecosystems.
Right, but what about that radiation problem you mentioned earlier? Asteroids are just out there exposed. How do you make the inside safe?
Well, that's where the asteroid itself helps you out. The outer layers, the regoliths, that loose rocky stuff, and the solid rock underneath, that's your radiation shield. It's actually way more effective pound for pound than shielding we could launch from Earth. Much less mass to worry about.
So the rock itself is the protection?
Primarily, yes. And you can enhance it, maybe with layers of water ice inside or even localized magnetic fields, potentially. Once it's hollowed out and shielded, then you pressurize it. Pump in a breathable atmosphere, nitrogen, oxygen, maybe sourced from the asteroid's own materials or brought from elsewhere.
Wow. Okay, so you build this shielded, pressurized shell, but then introducing life, actual living things, that sounds like a whole other level of difficulty. How do you get a delicate ecosystem to actually, survive and thrive in this little artificial bubble?
Yeah, this is where the bioengineering really comes into play, and it shows how far biotech has come. You start with the really tough guys, extremophile organisms, life forms that love harsh conditions, radiation, weird chemistry. You'd also introduce synthetic bacteria engineered specifically to, condition the soil substitute, break down waste gases, Basically prep the environment for more complex life.
So like microbial pioneers first.
Exactly, get the groundwork laid.
Yeah.
NASA and ESA are already deep into studying these bioregenerative life support systems, recycling CO2, making oxygen, growing food in closed loops. ISS has experiments on this right now. The key is creating a balanced, self-sustaining cycle. Perfectly balanced. Then eventually you add lighting, maybe artificial, maybe funneling in sunlight with mirrors for photosynthesis. You need AI to manage temperature, humidity, everything very precisely. And then you can start growing algae, fungi, crops, maybe even tiny forests inside these spinning chambers. Think of it like a miniature world, perfectly tuned.
Stepping inside one. That would be something else. A mini Eden. It sounds almost utopian, maybe too good to be true. But setting aside just how cool it would be to visit, what's the actual purpose? Why build these asteroid biospheres?
Well, the risks are definitely there. Isolated systems, one failure could cascade, sure. But the precision engineering is meant to minimize that.
Yeah.
As for purpose, multiple roles, really. Off-Earth agriculture is a big one. Fresh food for astronauts on long missions, maybe future starships.
Makes sense, like space farms.
Exactly. Also, seed banks, biovaults, preserving Earth biodiversity off-planet, just in case something catastrophic happens here.
A backup for Earth's life.
Sort of, yeah. And surprisingly, maybe therapeutic environments, green spaces to help with the mental health strain of long-duration spaceflight. That's being seriously considered. And in fact, really importantly, they could be terraforming test beds, laboratories to try out complex ecological engineering on a smaller scale before we attempt something massive like Mars or, say, Europa.
Living there would be surreal, wouldn't it? Curved gardens on rock walls, floating in low gravity, under an artificial sun. The vision includes maybe spinning them for artificial gravity, connecting them into networks.
That's the longer-term vision, yes. Rotating them for gravity, linking them with tethers or keeping them in coordinated orbits. You could specialize them. This one grows potatoes. This one's a biodiversity hub focused on rainforest species, maybe.
A whole network of specialized Edens.
And this decentralized approach, having many independent habitats instead of everything on one planet, it fundamentally makes human civilization more resilient.
Right, no single point of failure. If disaster strikes one place, it doesn't wipe everything out.
Exactly. That distributed model is a huge shift in thinking about long-term survival.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly ambitious. But let's be realistic. What are the really big hurdles? The major challenges we need to solve to make Asteroid Eden actually happen, not just a cool concept.
Oh, the challenges are immense. The engineering complexity, for one. Precision construction. Robotics working in zero-G for long durations.
Yeah.
That's hard. The initial energy cost would be enormous. We'd need breakthroughs in space-based power generation, probably.
Makes sense, powering these things up.
Then there's the biology itself, the long-term stability of these microecologies. We just don't fully know how they behave over decades or centuries. What if something gets out of balance and the AI systems running life support, climate control, they need to be incredibly reliable. There's no quick human fix if the CO2 scrubber fails,
Yeah, the stakes are incredibly high inside a closed system.
Absolutely. And beyond the technical stuff, there are some pretty profound ethical questions we need to think about.
That's a really important angle. You're talking about fundamentally changing celestial bodies, introducing life where there was none. What kind of ethical issues pop up?
Well, the big one is, should we? Should we introduce Earth life, even in a contained way, to places that are currently sterile? Was that a form of cosmic contamination, just because we have the capability?
Planetary protection, but on an ecosystem scale.
Kinda, yeah. Then there's ownership. If these Edens become viable, self-sustaining places, who owns them? Current space law, like the Outer Space Treaty from '67, says no nation can claim sovereignty. But commercial space is booming, and that complicates things. Where do private companies fit in?
Right. The legal framework hasn't really caught up with these kinds of possibilities.
Not entirely. And fundamentally, terraforming asteroids, even on this scale, forces us to ask what nature even means when we engineer it from scratch in space. How far should we go in remaking environments?
So this dream of an asteroid Eden, it's definitely moved beyond just, pure fantasy. It's this really profound vision. Resilience, ecosystems as architecture, biology as infrastructure.
Yeah, by turning rocks into rainforests, potentially, we're not just bringing life to dead space. We're actually expanding what home could mean, expanding life's potential reach in the cosmos. And, if we reach the point where we can engineer entire ecosystems on sterile asteroids, it really circles back to a question for you, the listener. How might this radical future change how we view our responsibility to the nature we already have right here on Earth? And what does a natural environment truly mean anyway, in the grand scheme of the cosmos.
That is a fascinating thought to chew on. Until our next deep dive, keep that curiosity going and keep digging deep.